Hey Gear Seekers, I'm Nick. I need to just take a sip of this coffee so I can absorb the monstrous size of this new Fractal Meshify 2 XL. That's what we're taking a look at today. Now, just as a bit of a caveat as well, I wanted to release this video after launch because I feel like sometimes when these new products come out, there's just a million videos in your sub box and I don't really want to get lost in all of that. And the other thing I wanted to talk about quickly as well in the intro is, before we even start this, mind you, is I think I'm going to be building my workstation in this thing basically because it's really big and I can fit everything in it, and we know what it's like when there's a lot of junk in the trunk. All right, ladies and gents, let's get into it. As usual with these builds, we only use parts that we have on hand. What we're going to do is the normal thing. We're going to thermally test it. We're going to do all of that. Now, I did mention that I was going to build my workstation in this, and that is going to come in another video. But what I want to do is just a regular build, just so we can test the thermals and everything like that with regular hardware, because what I'm going to be doing is actually upgrading this later. It's going to do the EK Pro custom loop with all the quick disconnects and everything because it's just massive. But I'm going to stop talking and we're going to take a closer look right now. So let's jump into it, pull it all apart, and see what makes the Meshify 2 XL tick. And that would be the cat. All right, ladies and gents, let's get the panels off. It's got a little pop mechanism with a retention edge. It's like a hinge down the bottom, and it kind of just swings away from the case. I actually like this because it's quite easy to work with. Deepcool does this on their cases as well, and I do like it. You just kind of flip it down and lift it up. Before someone comments, oh, you should get one of those Lazy Susan things because they make it easy to build and do these videos with, and I hate the sound that it makes when you rotate the case. Those Lazy Susan things absolutely suck for filming. They don't work. Please stop telling us to use them. They're terrible, absolutely terrible. Anyway, first up, we've got the bag of screws and tweezers and zip ties and everything you're going to need to build your PC. I'm quite surprised that it's not in like a plasticky case like they do with these more premium top-end cases, but here we are. This is how it is. While we're at the back, let's just take a look at everything that we've got back here. We've got these universal mounting brackets. Now, these can be used for hard drives. They can be used to mount to onto the front of fans. They can be used to mount pump res combos. Basically, they're just designed to be able to mount a whole bunch of different things, and these can be placed anywhere in the case as well. So you can unscrew them from the other side to remove them. So they've got little rubber grommet holes, and yeah, they're just like this universal bracket, which I think is pretty cool. If we move towards the right, you'll see the grommets for the cable pass-throughs for the motherboard and whatnot. Now, this is quite interesting because what you can do if you're going to be using an EATX board is you can pop these out and flip them around. So I think this needs to be done on more cases. So you pop these little plastic cover plates out, put the grommet in, and then put the cover on the other side, which is actually quite nice. We can remove this little thing down the bottom here. You just kind of pop it out. We've got access to the hard drive sleds down the bottom as well. But before we get to that, let's just quickly take a look at what else we've got going on here. If we take a look up the top, we've got a built-in fan hub. There's a bunch of DC fan connections as well as PWM on the other side. So there's 3 PWM and then there's 6 regular DC fan power connectors. There's some SSD mounting on the back of the motherboard tray as well. In terms of cable management, we have this cable routing pathway with the Velcro tie downs, which is very, very nice. I love when they do this. It just makes my life easier. There's also a stack of included fans, which we're going to get to as well. As far as front panel connectivity, all the regular stuff, you've got your USB 3.0, you've got USB Type-C, and your other front panel wires for your lights and your switches and all that other jazz, and the audio connector as well for the front panel. Yeah, nothing super special going on here, but it is nice that they have this. And for my rig that I think I'm going to be building in this later down the line, this will definitely be used because I'm actually finding myself using front panel USB-C more than I used to. And yes, I know what I said a couple months ago that I don't, but now I do, so things change. The basement's a pretty interesting one here. We don't really have a limitation on power supply size. Most large power supplies will fit in here. You've also got your 4 hard drive sleds as well, which just are removable with this thumb screw here. I can't do these by hand, so I'll just quickly loosen them up so you can have a quick look. They're just regular old hard drive sleds. They're pretty standard Fractal ones. Nothing too exciting here. Pretty standard stuff from Fractal, but what I do like again is this. Now I'll show you because I didn't really explain this, but this is a plastic panel that kind of just drops in and clips into place like that to hide all the cables on the backside, which is quite nice, kind of unnecessary, but also good for when things start to bulge out the bottom when you want to put that back panel back on. So it is quite nice, and because there's no screws to hold in the back panel also makes sense too. While we're on the subject of the basement as well, we've got these handy little doodads that it's basically a bracket that you mount your power supply into so you can backload your power supply into the case. I love these. Phanteks does this as well. Fractal's done this before, but basically you just mount your power supply to this, load it in the back, and you're good to go. I do like this mechanism, and I think this is great if you wanted to add things to your modular power supply because you don't actually have to unplug anything. You can undo that, slide it out, get access to it, and then slot it back in. Let's take a little bit of a closer look at that fan hub. So like I mentioned, you've got your 6 DC fan power connectors, your 3 PWM fan connectors. You'll notice there's a PWM fan connector for the motherboard so you can control the fan speed from your motherboard, and a SATA or SATA power connector to actually provide additional power as well. In terms of motherboard support, we've got all the regular motherboard support. You got ITX, MATX, ATX, EATX, XLATX, and it doesn't look like SSI EEB could work in here. I could be wrong, but it just doesn't look like it's quite long enough, but probably wrong. Yeah, it probably does fit, but whatever. There's a bunch of pass-throughs for basically every single thing that you're seeing that exposes itself to the front of the motherboard. It is very nice to see this. It is legitimately everywhere, including the bottom, everywhere. There's a grommet for everything. So this is actually quite a interesting way of doing it. I wish more cases would have these kind of grommets. I know a lot of people complain that more cases don't do it, but it only would cost a case vendor a little bit extra to do this, and I like that there's a lot of attention to detail. That's kind of Fractal's MO though. They always have this really high attention to detail. It's why I recommend Fractal cases to people when I'm doing builds for them as well, because they're usually very solid and they'll last you a very long time. In terms of included fans, you've got 2 140mm fans up the front. They're DC powered, they're not PWM. And also another 140mm DC fan up the back as well. So 3 included fans in total. All right, in terms of water cooling and radiator support, this case doesn't have very many limitations. So if you wanted to do it, I mean, you'd need to be aware of things like the thickness of the rads themselves. You can do a 480mm at the top and a 480 at the front. Absolutely ridiculous. And I like it. That's one of the reasons why I'm gonna be using this case as the editing PC, because I'm probably gonna do 420 at the front and a 360 up the top. But in this build, we're just gonna do a 360 at the top. Front panel / top panel connectivity is quite nice. USB 3.0, reset button, power switch, USB Type-C, and a headphone and a microphone jack. I just did that backwards, but you guys understand. You guys know what I'm talking about. USB Type-C, everyone's gonna be like, yay, and I tend to agree now, especially because I'm gonna be using this as a workstation at a later date. Now that I've covered all the casey stuff, what makes this thing special? Well, there's a few things that I like about this case personally. I like that these can be popped up quite easily. So you can, if you're gonna be putting a big radiator down the bottom, you can remove the drive cages at the bottom, put a radiator in, and you should be good to go. You can also remove that as well if you wanted to be putting a pump res in the combo and passing it up, or if you wanted to pass cables up and through. Very, very handy idea. I do like that quite a bit. Much like the R6 and R7, the mid plate here can be moved to the other side of the case. So if you wanted to have like a bunch of other drives, so I think from memory, you can do 12 drives in this, or maybe it's 16 drives, something completely ridiculous. But you can move this mid plate over to the front side of the case so you can have additional drive mounting if you were to be using this as a NAS or a high capacity file server. Very, very cool. I won't be doing that in this build because it just involves a little bit too much disassembly, and to be honest, I'm gonna probably cover this in the next video that we do with this anyway, because I have a very interesting plan and I wanna test something, so we will get into this in the other video that we do with this. Much like the Define R7 as well, it does feature something that I really like with these cases. Basically, pop off the top panel, and then there's 2 screws, one here and one here. On the other side, pull that filter off first, and like I mentioned, with a little bit of computer wizardry, you can remove the whole top bracket of the case. So if you're doing a custom loop and you wanted to mount the radiator and stuff outside of the case, you can do that as well. Very lovely mechanism. There's also a fill port at the top as well, so I'll probably be using the fill port when I do my workstation build in this, but yes, there's also a fill port up the top too. As shown on the top of the case, there is a dust filter at the top of the case that will sit between the bracket and the top of the case. There's a bottom filter that basically slides out the whole length of the case, which is, it's huge, it's a big filter, and that allows you to then yank the front of the case off like all the other Meshify cases. This is slightly different to the other Meshify cases we've seen in the past. It doesn't have that foamy layer. It's just straight up mesh now, which is quite nice, but ultimately doesn't make a huge difference. I do like the fact that they've given you a lot of options. Again, this case is a very niche case. It's really designed for people who need to jam a lot of stuff in their computers. Otherwise, it's not really for everyone. For water cooling enthusiasts, this thing is gonna be epic because you can fit anything in it. You can do anything with this case. There's no limitation on anything. If you guys are new here, you may or may not know this, I've been on the hunt for the perfect workstation case for such a long time for my own personal workstation. Obviously, we helped design that Cooler Master case, the NR600P, but I wanted to use that as a secondary system. I wanted to find something that I was gonna use for like my own custom loop with the quick disconnects and everything for my own personal workstation. This is looking like the candidate for that. However, I'm gonna do a regular build in this, and by regular, I mean not a build that's gonna stay together, because there's a few things I wanna find out with building in it. So I'm not gonna use an EATX board or anything like that. And I know that they have the regular Meshify 2 now as well, but this is a little bit bigger and a little bit more versatile. So let's do a build, and then we'll find out if this thing's any good. Alright ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the build in the brand new Fractal Meshify 2 XL, and like the name, it is extra large. And speaking of extra large, let's take a quick look at those thermals. Now what you're seeing here on your screen right in front of you is the thermals are absolutely phenomenal. There's no real difference between all of the panels being on and everything being off. So very, very impressive from Fractal. And that's probably to do with the size of the case and the amount of pressure that can be created with ramming 4 fans down the throat of a GPU and a CPU cooler. It is very, very impressive thermally, which is another reason that I suspected from the get-go that this would be my new workstation case, because it is going to run relatively cool, and I like cool. Yeah. Anyways, ladies and gents, it wouldn't be a Gear Seekers video if we didn't talk about the parts. The CPU is the brand new AMD Ryzen 9 5950X. You guys know all about this CPU by now. We chucked that on the Gigabyte X570 Aorus Master. The GPU is the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3090 Founders Edition. Yes, we have a Founders Edition. We've used it a couple times in builds actually, and yeah, it's a big chunky boy. I've also got 32 gigs of Thermaltake Tough RAM at 3600 megahertz. To cool the 5950X, we use the Deepcool Castle EX360 RGB, but I didn't use the included RGB fans. I used a Cooler Master fan frame. It's the SF360. We get asked about that quite a lot. For storage, we went with the Samsung 980 Pro. I like it, it's fast, you should like it too. You can check out our video where people say the graphs are too fast, although you can just watch the video in half speed, so yeah. Technology, it's right there at your fingertips. One of the most asked questions about these videos, and I'm gonna answer it in this video right from the get-go, how do you do the split lighting on the fans? I don't know why people like it so much, Claire, it's weird, eh? It's just something that we started doing a couple years ago and people really like it. The way that we do it, like we do it a couple ways. Usually we would use Cooler Master's Master Plus software to do it, but the other way that we do it is we actually have a Corsair Commander Pro in the bottom, and you're probably thinking, how are you lighting up those fans with the Commander Pro? Well, I made a RGB, well a 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB cable to a Corsair RGB cable, and I can plug in anything with a regular 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB connector and control it in iCUE. Maybe I'll do a video about it one day, maybe just like, I don't know, is it worth doing a whole video on how to make one of these cables for yourself, Claire? Maybe I'll do a video on how to make your own RGB cables for adapting them and stuff. But yeah, I do that because yeah, it's really easy to do and it makes life easier when we're setting up lighting and stuff. Also, the other question we're gonna get is that Gear Seekers pump top. They are very limited edition. There's 11 of them in total. There's probably about 8 of them left, and Deepcool actually made those for us. So they are completely custom. They were like, hey, can we have a copy of your logo? We want to make you a present. And then 11 of them showed up and I was like, wow, that's really cool. So yeah, that's the story for that. But let's rewind and talk about the Meshify 2 XL. Cable management on this case is absolutely excellent. There is so much room, and I may be starting to sound like a Fractal fanboy, but this case is so massive with so many included tie downs and stuff that it just makes it so easy to build in. This thing was an absolute dream to build in. I had no issues with getting anything to fit, quite obviously. That's why I put in the 3090 as well, because it is such a massive GPU and it looks completely tiny in this case. And that was the point of using it too. So you could see the scale of this case. It is so big and unnecessary, but I really like it. I think it's insane. And I remember saying a little while ago that, you know, I'm never gonna be building a big PC again for my workstation, and I wanna make a small water cooling PC. It's just not possible. Well, not in the way that I wanted anyway. And this case seems to execute everything that I wanted to execute for my use case, which will be a custom water cooled editing PC with quick disconnects. So it's going to be like full professional mode, like proper workstation gear, not just like hard tubing. It's going to have none of that. It's going to be soft tube, quick disconnects, a distribution manifold, the whole lot, completely professional. But yeah, I think that's all I wanted to talk about with this case. I like it. That's the conclusion. I like it. I think it's good, but it's not for everyone. Just like half the cases that I like different stuff to most people. But yeah, I thought it was good. What do you reckon, Claire? Do you like it?
It's big.
I tell you what though, one thing I wanted to add as well. This case fully built, like with all this hardware, is not that heavy. And usually when we build massive PCs, the cases are just stupidly heavy, but this case is just not that heavy, and I like that. Although the version of the PC that this will end up being eventually will be probably heavy because it will be filled with water and all of that other stuff. But I think that Fractal's done a pretty darn good job with this case. And the last question is, would I recommend this case? The answer is yes. I think it's very good. I think it's very good. Also, guys, there's something interesting I wanted to share about this case as well. Wendell from Level 1 Techs actually did a video about this case this morning, because we're filming this like a day after everyone, because that's what we wanted to do. And he's got some schematics for 3D printed feet for these cases that you can buy casters from eBay or Amazon or whatever for your computer chairs and put these big cases on caster wheels. So yeah, that'd be something that I will probably look at doing as well. Use those rollerblade casters that I've got on my office chair now and put those on the case. That'd be pretty good, huh? Just roll it around and away you go. Anyways, ladies and gents, that's basically it from us. I like the case. If you like the music, it's available over on our Patreon. I make all the music. Wow, that didn't even make sense coming out of my mouth just then. It was just like, blah, 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 blah. And if you want early access to videos just like this one, head on over to our Floatplane. We're going to start experimenting on Floatplane a bit and doing some other types of content that we won't be putting on YouTube, because I feel like it's the perfect place for us to experiment a little. So we're going to do that. And yeah, I think we're done here. PC part picker is down below in the description as well if you want to know what everything is. Once again, thank you so very much for watching. I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. You peek, we seek. And no, Fractal didn't pay us a cent for this. You can tell because we use like an array of all different types of parts. Not saying that that's usually what happens, but I'm just saying like I just used whatever I thought would fit in here. And there's a couple other things I want to add to the end of the video for people who watch this part of the video. We have a PlayStation 5 video coming very soon. Our PlayStation 5, the one that everyone's seen me on social media holding and blah, 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 is one of my best mates one. He lives literally next door. He got it this morning and I walked over to his house, which is literally 10 meters away, and I held it just to troll you guys. But we have one coming tomorrow, and we wanted to do something very different because of Apple announcing all of these new ARM Macs. I'm a bit skeptical about all of these figures that they're putting out. So I went and bought one of the new Mac Minis as well. So that should arrive on launch day. So we'll be doing a review of the new Mac Mini. So yeah, interesting stuff. And it's going to be more of a piece about like the ARM Macs in general. But yeah, it should be pretty interesting. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. We never say that, right? Anyways, guys. I guess I should just go now. See you later. This was a weird video for me. See ya. Why are you still here? Stop watching the video. Jeez.